Hello dear students, and welcome again to the second unit dedicated to Croatian theatre. The focal point of our lesson will be an overview of the history of theatre life in the city of Split, in the city of Zadar, and the island of Hvar. So let us begin with the island of Hvar, which has a rich historical and cultural background. Nowadays it is one of the most visited and favorite tourist destinations in Dalmatia. Hvar was, just like many other places along the Croatian coast, governed by occupying foreign powers in the past who were trying to impose their language and turn Hvar into their military and administrative base. The Italian influence and dominance were the strongest and the most present in Hvar in the past. The theatre life in Hvar started to bloom in the Renaissance with religious drama and pastoral plays. One of the most well-known religious dramas was the play of the life of Saint Lawrence the Martyr, written somewhere between the end of the 16th and the beginning of the 17th century. It was first performed in the old town in Hvar in 1714. The play is still performed by the amateur theatre company from Hvar, making it the longest-running play in Croatia. One of the most distinguished Croatian poets and playwrights from the Renaissance from Hvar was Hannibal Lucic, who wrote the play Robinja, Female Slave, based on the familiar motif of a kidnapped and found girl, and the play was for a long time considered the first secular play on Croatian soil. When the Venetian governor Pietro Semitekolo came to Hvar, he wanted to mark his presence in Hvar by establishing cultural events. First of all, he financed the erection of the arsenal for storing munitions and weapons, which was finished in 1611. It is believed that he supervised the constructing of a theatre hall on the upper floor of the arsenal in 1612. What we know for sure is that the hall was built, but we do not have any proof that it served for theatrical purposes. The earliest proof of its theatrical usage dates back from 1711 and 1712, when it was mentioned as the only municipal public theatre building open for both the nobility and the local people from Hvar at that time. In case that it was used as a theatrical space in 1612, the theatre hall on the first floor of the arsenal would be the oldest theatre on Croatian soil, the third permanent theatre in Europe, and the first democratic and public civic theatre in Europe. Part of the interior of the theatre dates back from the year 1803, but today's appearance of the theatre dates back from the mid-19th century, which puts it among the 10 oldest Baroque theatres in Europe. It is also well known for the preserved backstage wall paintings from the early 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. This theatre used to host traveling theatre and opera companies, as well as domicile amateur theatre companies. In the last years of the 20th century, theatre performances were still given there, but on a smaller scale, and due to its poor condition it stopped serving for theatrical purposes, and nowadays this building is a museum space of cultural and historical significance. Today in Hvar there is the amateur theatre Petar Hektorović that was established in 1893 and named after the Croatian poet from Hvar. The theatre company has been active ever since, and their repertoire is mostly composed of comedies. There are also two important cultural events in Hvar: Hvar Summer Festival, which offers a variety of artistic programs from theatre performances to music concerts, and the Days of the Theatre of Hvar, one of the most significant events in Croatia dedicated to theatre. Let us now say something about theatre life in the city of Zadar. Zadar is the second biggest city in the Croatian region of Dalmatia. It is also a city of rich historical, political and cultural background. The history and political changes of the city of Zadar, a place with the traces of the first settlements and people that date back to the late Stone Age, are quite similar to those of the island of Hvar, with the dominance of the Italian reign in the past. The first theatrical activities in Zadar and nearby places after the ancient times are connected with liturgical dramas in the 11th century and other medieval religious dramas, such as the miracle play Muka Svete Margarite or the Passion of Saint Margarita, which was written in the early 16th century, somewhere around in the area around Zadar. The 17th, 18th and the 19th centuries were dominated by Italian traveling theatre and opera companies, who would stage their performances, operas, or even more operettas in the Italian language. The first theatre building in Zadar was erected in 1697 and later it was placed in Palazzo Fozze in Zadar. The theatre life was so dynamic in the 17th and 18th century that the city finally erected a permanent theatre building in 1783 called Teatro Nobile, and in 1865 a monumental and magnificent Teatro Nuovo, later called Teatro Verdi, that was destroyed in the Second World War. Teatro Nobile was the most important opera house in Dalmatia in the 19th century and was located in the mere city center in Calle Larga, the main street in Zadar, even today. The interior of Teatro Nobile was richly decorated, and the building served as a theatre house for traveling Italian opera companies. The theatre was closed in 1882 and restored in 1924 by an entrepreneur from Zadar, Aldo Meštrović, who also renamed it to Teatro Nazionale. The new theatre also served as a cinema and music hall, and it was damaged during the bombarding of the city in 1941 and 1943 by the Allies, but it was not as damaged as the new theatre. The new theatre, Teatro Nuovo, or later Teatro Verdi, was opened in 1865. Today, we only have some documents and images from that period that mention this theatre, which was a reflection of the city's political and economic prosperity and power at that time. The new theatre, Teatro Nuovo, Teatro Verdi, was the biggest and the most beautiful theatre in the eastern Adriatic coast. The interior was decorated and painted by the best artists and architects from Venice and Vienna. The auditorium could host 1,500 spectators. The magnificent Teatro Verdi was in use until the Second World War, when it was heavily destroyed. Afterwards, the theatre was never rebuilt or restored, and nowadays there are no material any architectural traces of Teatro Verdi in Zadar. The Croatian language entered the theatre space in Zadar in the mid-19th century, and at first was connected with theatre performances given in the Croatian language in religious schools where young men were educated to become priests. The first professional theatre in Zadar that gave performances in the Croatian language emerged in 1944 with the establishing of the Company of the National Theatre Zadar. The new theatre building was erected in 1945 and was opened with the play Dundomaroje, written by Marin Držić. In 1963, the theatre was closed down and it was restored and reopened in 1968. In 1992, the Croatian Theatre House of Zadar was established. The drama ensemble was extremely active during the Homeland War in Zadar in the early 1990s. They gave many theatre performances, and music and other cultural and artistic events were organized as well, even when Zadar was heavily bombarded and attacked. In November 2009, this theatre was renamed to the Croatian National Theatre in Zadar. Nowadays, the Croatian National Theatre in Zadar stages both classical and contemporary works written by Croatian and foreign authors, placing a special emphasis on staging and promoting Croatian authors. Let us now say something about theatre history and life in Split. The city of Split is the second biggest city in the Republic of Croatia after Zagreb, and it is the biggest city on the eastern coast of the Adriatic Sea. Split is also well known for its rich cultural and historical background, and the mere city center makes the ancient Diocletian's palace built in the 4th century, and in 1979 it was inscribed in the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. The history and political changes of the city of Split in the past are quite similar to many other coastal places and cities in Croatia, with the dominant influences coming from Italy. The theatre life in Split started in the Middle Ages, and it was marked by religious drama. Its peak was achieved in the 15th and 16th century, when most of the religious plays in Split were written by the Croatian Renaissance poet and writer Marko Marulić, known also as the father of Croatian literature. In the second half of the 18th century, the number of the Italian traveling theatre and opera companies that performed in the Italian language in Split also grew bigger, and they pushed the Croatian language and Croatian performances in the background. Other cities along the Croatian Adriatic coast suffered the same fate. The government in Split at that time was in the hands of those who supported Italy. The leader of the pro-Italian supporters in Split was Antonio Baiamonti, a doctor who soon became the mayor of Split. Even though he was against the Croatian national revival movement, he did all he could to turn Split into a prosperous city. He offered to finance the erection of a theatre building. He built Procurative, even today a well-known square in the city centre, known as a venue for various cultural and artistic events. Procurative ended with a theatre building called Teatro Baiamonti that was opened in December 1859 and it burned down in May 1881. The theatre hosted mainly visiting theatre and opera companies from Italy, and it had the capacity to take 1,300 spectators, double the size of the auditorium than today's Croatian National Theatre in Split. The theatre building was later restored, but it did not keep its original architecture. In the recent history, it served as the Cinema Marian and as the youth theatre. Since 1882, the city of Split was governed by People's Party and Dr. Gajo Bulat. That period was marked by a greater number of theatre amateurs and guest performances given by theatre companies from Croatia and Serbia. This fact incited the local government to build a new theatre building. The new theatre, Municipal Theatre, was opened in 1893 with the performance given by the drama ensemble from Zagreb. This is considered a historically significant event because it confirmed the connection between the north and the south of the country. The theatre had 1,000 seats and was the biggest theatre in Croatia at that time. Croatian theatre activities in Split after the opening of the new theatre remained on the amateur level, and the Italian opera companies continued to perform in Split. The attempts to move closer to establishing a Croatian professional theatre scene happened in 1899, when young people, future eminent Croatian writers, musicians and composers, formed the Croatian Theatre Society for Dalmatia. The Central Ministry of Education in Belgrade decided in 1920 to establish the first permanent theatre in the Croatian language in Split, the National Theatre for Dalmatia. But soon, in 1928, it was decided to merge the Theatre of Split and the Theatre of Sarajevo into one theatre. The newly established theatre was supposed to carry the name of the National Theatre for Western Provinces. The theatre life in the Croatian language in Split experienced its revival with Ivo Tijardović, a Croatian composer and conductor who was active within the City Opera and Operetta Society in the city of Split. In 1939, it was agreed to establish a permanent theatre in the Croatian language in Split, that is, the Croatian National Theatre, which had its opera, drama and ballet. Yet, it existed only for 7 months. In 1941, the Italians occupied Split and used theatre as a means for spreading their fascist ideology. After the city of Split was liberated from the occupying Italy, in 1945, the People's Theatre Liberation of Dalmatia was established, and it was opened with Matija Gubec's King of the Peasants, a tragedy by Mirko Bogović. The director of the newly established theatre was Ivo Tijardović. The theatre was soon renamed the Croatian National Theatre in Split, with its first director Tomislav Tanhofer, a Croatian actor and stage director. Today, the Croatian National Theatre in Split is one of the biggest and oldest theatre houses in Dalmatia and in the Mediterranean. It stages both Croatian and foreign authors, classical and contemporary works. It is a house of drama, opera and ballet ensembles. There are also 2 major theatrical events in Split held every year: Splitsko Ljeto, Split Summer Festival, a festival of dramatic and opera performances established in 1954, and Marulićevi Dani, Days of Marulić, a festival established in 1991 and dedicated to Croatian contemporary dramatic works. So thank you very much for your attention. I truly hope you enjoyed this lesson, and if you are eager to expand your knowledge, learn something more, you can check the document titled Croatian Theatre in Split and Dalmatia, which contains more detailed information on this topic.